This is KossTalk with Evan Kossman, and you are listening to episode 4. This week features an interview with David Tartick, president of Sunray Electronics. We talked about the sales game and what has changed within it over the past 4 decades. We also talked about taking over his father's business, the role of a distributor in the modern business landscape, and much more. It was a great interview, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Let's start at the beginning of Sunray Electronics. Talk about the start in 1959.
Well, actually, in 1959, I was quite young, but I understand my father started the business by meeting some lighting manufacturers at the hardware show in Chicago. And he basically went into a booth. They were manufacturers. They were looking for Canadian distribution. They made some sort of arrangement, partnered up. And that's when they began business.
When would you say the business took off? Just when he started out, he started up, or it was when he started hiring people and going door to door, that was when he took that next step?
Well, I think in the early 60s, he probably started experiencing some success. And really success would be predicated around sales and customers. And he developed a customer base with the hospitality industry that coincidentally we still work closely with today. In a typical distribution setup, you effectively buy product, put it on your shelf, and hope to sell it. Sounds pretty weird in today's economy, but that's what distributors do, stocking distributors. And he found that his key market became the hospitality industry. So that's who he sold to.
Okay. So when did you start getting involved with the business?
I joined him in 78.
And talk about your background before you joined.
Well, I had finished school, I'd finished university. I had always worked through high school and college. I had worked in a hotel. I had worked selling electronics, audio, car stereos, CB radios at the time, and when I finished school, I wound up my part-time work and effectively came to work for my father.
When we were talking before, you said you didn't want to go into practice with your father. Why was that?
Well, I don't think I ruled it out. I had some other preferences. I remember going for a couple interviews in a different field. I didn't get the job. It was property management, actually. I remember going out to Peterborough for an interview. And anyway, my dad sort of said to me, if you're not working by Monday, you're starting with me. So, all right, needed the money and said, okay, let's do it.
And that was it.
The rest is history.
When did you start hitting your groove within the company that made you say you wanted to stay?
I'm not sure I still want to stay. The first year he gave me a sample kit and we put some light bulbs in my trunk and he said, walk up Yonge Street and come back when you're done. And I said, done what? He said, Yonge Street. I looked on a map and I saw Yonge Street turns into Highway 11 and ends in Manitoba. And I go, I'm not sure this is for me. But basically knocked on doors for a good part of a year and eventually made it into the office. So.
And what was that transition like?
It was better. It was a lot warmer in the office, I can tell you. But selling is selling, you know. It doesn't matter if it's selling retail like I used to when people would come to you and you would show them something, or you would knock on their door and show them something, or even today, you know, we're very hands-on, like to show people what we're recommending. And
you said sales are sales, but would you notice anything that's different between then and now?
Well, there's lots that are different. Our business model is very much the same, and there's still a need for a certain level of expertise and surrounding a product, and people do find that online, or they'll find today, whereas they used to find that from sales reps a little more readily. I think people today are much more informed. And they have to be. The markets become, the products have become much more technical. So that's really, I think the big thing is that the buyers or the users themselves of the product know a lot more about the product, or think they do, than they used to.
So what do you think are some key qualities in being a good salesperson?
Patience is one. I think you have to bite your tongue often. You can't burn any bridges. But sometimes, you know what? Sometimes you're pushed over the edge, and there's ways of suggesting that maybe someone's gone a little too far. But a lot of that may come through maturity and that sort of thing. Those are all important, but you just really have to respect who you're dealing with. It's not an adversarial relationship between buyer and seller. We try to make it a partnership, and that we feel is better for both sides. So that to me is important. Just being a person, good person. That's what you hope of your customers, and you hope to be yourself.
How important are relations within sales?
Well, I think relationships are very important. We put a lot of emphasis on them. Whether the customer always thinks they're that important or not, you don't know. Some companies discourage their buyers from having any relationship with anybody in a sales company. Listen, the people we deal with know a lot about a lot of things, and we like to suggest that we're experts in what we do, and we can help them. We try to make it so that we have a common goal, which is to light their facility properly, whether it be energy saving, whether it be the right products, that type of thing. That's important. And if you have a good relationship with somebody, you can explain that. Sometimes you can't. So just move on.
Where do you see the advantages with having a long-term established client?
For us or for the client?
Either or.
Right. Well, I mean, look, we have customers, we have buildings that we've dealt with since I started from the office in the very early 80s, since I started really focusing on sales. We have customers, people that we've dealt with for 20, 25 years. People retire, they move on. Buildings stay the same, they change owners, they change management. Their requirements change as well, but they still need some sort of lighting product. As I said earlier, I think if you have a good relationship, strong relationship, it's only helpful. I don't see it being a hindrance to the success of doing the right thing in their facility.
So we were talking about relations, and I was wondering, why do you think business to business, while some places have adapted to technology, it's still a relationship game?
So in other words, why isn't everybody going online, buying what they need, and so on? It's that type of thing? Is that what you're saying? Why are we even needed? I don't know. I ask myself that all the time. I have no idea why or how. We just do, and we've been doing. I think in the last 5 years, you could make a case that less of a need for a company like us, a distributor, and you could make an equally strong case that there's more of a need for somebody like us. Less of a need because there's so much product out there, there's so much online, there's so many choices, it's so easy to get stuff. More of a need because there's so much product out there, nobody knows what the hell they're doing. It's confusing even to me, who's been in the business for 40 years. And if it's confusing to me, who tries to be an expert on one item or one commodity, I can't imagine what it's like for them who have to run a whole building and have the same issues with plumbing and electrical and HVAC and everything else. These guys are incredible. Our customers are incredible. And I see them in action through some of the organizations I'm in, and they've come a long way, the people I deal with, from the guys I first used to deal with, who sometimes you would get in front of them at the office and they'd open the drawer and they'd put out a bottle of whiskey, okay? And they would order in from room service or the Coke machine, some Coke and glass and ice, and you would do drinks right at the table and write the order. And those were the guys that my dad dealt with in the 60s and 70s, right? And the guys today are engineers. And well, first of all, they don't do that anymore, obviously, and there's good reasons why not. I think back in the day, everyone was probably an alcoholic because of it. But that was the way it was done. And but today, though, but they're so smart. They know they know accounting. They not only know their field, but they know things that I can't believe that they know. So, but they don't know this, right? So even though they have some knowledge and can find things online, I think there's still a need for people who have some expertise. And so here we are, continuing on.
How have you looked for areas to expand?
Over the years, we've added certain related accessories to our lines that will complement what we provide. We've expanded into other areas. Most of what we did early on was a direct supply of product for their own use, which of course they would require on a monthly basis. Today, as people are moving into other types of lighting, stuff that lasts much longer, their requirement for replacement is much less. Therefore, our volumes in that side of the business is less. So we've had to move more into projects where we'll do a change from X to Y. So these are the type of things that we've done, that we've had to do, is to change our business focus a little bit. So it's not really adding new products, which of course we do all the time. It's changing and expanding our focus of the way we actually sell them, provide them.
Interesting. So when you're looking at new products as they come out, how do you distinguish between a fad or something you should actually invest in?
I think after all these years, I have a fairly good idea what would fit into our program, right? Whether it's a fad or not. I mean, that's not really relative to our sales. We provide stuff, product that our customers use for their own use. If there's going to be a change, they'll buy the same thing if their requirement remains the same, until they're shown that there's a better product for that requirement, or they've done a renovation where that facility has changed greatly, or they no longer need that. So we find things from our vendors. We make sure we have very good relationships with our vendors. We count on them to show us stuff that other people may be buying. We go to trade shows where they exhibit these things, and that's how we find out. And of course, we go online and look for certain things, but as well, our customers will say that they've seen something, or somebody else brought them something that they're interested in, so they do teach us as well. So that's all valuable.
Yeah, that's an interesting outlet to find out about things that the customer brings to you, and you can learn more about it. So we were talking before, and you had a motto. What was it? Or would you like to tell our listeners what it was?
A motto. I think one of the philosophies that we use around here is, and we try to tell our people, is problems are going to come up for whatever reason, beyond our control, caused by something we've done or whatever. And when we need to approach the customer about it, we believe, tell the customer what the problem is, but at the same time, have a solution in mind. Whether it's a stopgap solution, or here's a few things to tide you over, or the courier's lost the stuff, anything like that. You can't, you need to give them a full package solution with the problem, so that it looks like you've actually owned it and done some work on it on their behalf. They're counting on us to provide them with some goods. If something comes up and we can't provide what we were supposed to, we need to find something else and give them an alternative. So don't mention a problem without having a possible solution at the same time. That's what we try to do around here.
That's fair. You don't want to be calling them and just say, here's the problem, without having a way to get out of it.
Sure, they're going to say, well, what the hell do you want me to do about it? Right? Like, what can I do?
Mm-hmm.
And so you need an answer, right? You don't want to say, I'll get back to you. So before you expose the issue, do your work and be ready with that answer for them. Whether they agree with it or say, don't worry about it or whatever, that's up to them. That's discussion. But don't say, I don't know.
That feeds into the question about relationships.
Yeah. The words I don't know are scary when you're counting on somebody who's supposed to know.
Great way to put it. So describe a day when you leave it and you just say, I just nailed it today.
Oh, we never use language like that. But look, for us, the results have always, for me, because I was always sales oriented, the result was always in the order itself. So when that purchase order comes in, when we see the order, I know that we've done the proper work. That's the acknowledgement. My father, on the other hand, who started the business and was always short of cash flow and that sort of thing, for him, the gratitude was when he would get the check. The mailman would bring the check and he'd open the mail, there'd be checks. Well, we don't see a lot of checks anymore. A lot of direct deposits, transfers, wires, whatever. It's always nice to get paid, obviously. It's also an acknowledgement that everything is fine, or it's usually an acknowledgement of that. But for us, I get very excited still when I see that order come in, even if I know it's coming. To me, that's what turns our crank in this office.
It's just seeing it in front of you. It's a sign of accomplishment. That's great. To build continuity between episodes, I have my last guest ask my current guest a question, and I have my current guest ask a question for the next person. So this question comes from Adam Wilson, who asks, what is a characteristic you find common in successful people?
Good question from Adam. What would I find common? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is really the ability to listen to what people are really saying. Not necessarily being quiet and listening, but hearing them and understanding and having an idea of what it is you need to talk about. Certainly there's times to yak and blab and talk about the J's or whatever. That's all part of that relationship thing. But somewhere you have to figure out what you're going to talk about, because it's still a business relationship. And so pinpointing what's important, listening to what they're saying. And that doesn't mean what they're saying. Listening to me is evaluating the whole situation and focusing in somewhere in our approach to what it is they need. Because moving goods really is what it's all about in a business relationship. There's all sorts of other things as well, but ultimately we need to move goods.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And what is your question for our next guest?
Well, we have an expression here that we talk about. It's called digging a hole and filling a hole, right? And there's a number of things that can be interpreted by that. But my question would be, what to you is more important, digging a hole or filling a hole? And you can look at that as a philosophy almost, right? Are you a doer, or are you do you sit back and let things be done for you? So my question really would be that. What's more important to you, digging the hole or filling the hole?
Great question. All right. Thank you, Dave, for doing this. And thank you, listeners, for listening.
Pleasure.
All right. Big thanks to David for being on the podcast this week. I know he's quite busy, so I appreciate him taking the time out to record. Just the usual follow-up notes. If you're new to the podcast, if you could rate and subscribe on iTunes and Google Play, or follow us or like us on Twitter and Facebook under the username KossTalk. We're trying to build a following, so any and everything is really appreciated and it helps with exposure. And I'll talk to you next week. Bye, everybody.